Evening, everyone. We're going to get going max 5 minutes, but we're going to wait at least a couple more minutes for people to dial in. Evening, everyone. We're going to get going in a couple of minutes. Thank you for joining. Okay, folks, we'll get going right now. So, welcome everyone. My name is Paul Crickler. I'm the chair of this Roosevelt Island Committee of Community Board 8. You're very welcome to this meeting. I'm glad we have so many people here already. I guess we're going to get a few more dialing in. We have a nice agenda today. So, firstly, we're going to have Brian Daniels with a REOC update. I know there are people there who want to talk about the tram, so there'll be a bit of discussion there. Number two, I see Brandon on the Zoom with us, library updates. Number three is any updates on other community events. And then we're going to have Amy Namdar and Rosanna Cheruzzi talking about some poisoning of some animals on the island, and they're going to lead a discussion of that. And then finally, Kev Guzman will be talking about trying to get a no smoking area put around the Good Shepherd Chapel. So without further ado, let me ask you to unmute Bryant Daniels, please, Rose. And I'll hand it over to Bryant for any update.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, Paul. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Daniels. I'm the Communications Director with the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. Pleasure to see everybody here for the November Community Board meeting. Pretty crazy that we are already in November and this year is almost over. But here we are. And I know we got a lot going on around the island. So a couple of things I just wanted to talk about a little bit. With my updates. Going back to what Paul said, we can start, I guess, with the tram slowdown, which has been a topic of conversation a lot around the island. As I think everybody on this call probably knows, back in early October, we, in conjunction with the Department of Labor and our tram operator, Lightner Poma, we slowed the tram down moderately to improve ride quality, specifically in instances where there are swinging and jostling that comes about. Just to back up a little bit, going back, I guess, last fall, we started to notice a couple of instances where there was some heavy swinging on certain tram cabins. Long story short, it involves interruptions with the onboard communication system and the system at the station. So basically what happens is if those communications are interrupted, the tram cabin goes into what's called a controlled stop until it regains the connection between the cabin and the station. And so we were seeing a lot of those, a high frequency of those. And basically what it comes down to is the communication system is, as far as telecom goes, it's a bit old. The trams were, redone by POMA back in 2010. A lot's happened in the telecom space between 2010 and now. There's a lot more interference out there in terms of Bluetooth, wireless, cellular devices. And with that combined with, aging components, degrading components. And for a while there, the swing dampeners that we had on the cabins were not adequate. So there's a lot that sort of happened over time, and it sort of caught up with us, and we had these instances of heavy swaying. We've been working hard. Well, Lightner Poma has been working hard to address it. We have seen a pretty strong reduction in the number of communications interruptions that were causing incidents of swaying. And we've seen that the swing dampeners that we've added to the cabins and have tuned have done a good job in reducing, when we do have those interruptions, the degree to which the cabins are swaying. But it's not at zero. That's where we want it. And ultimately, rider safety and comfort is our main priority. So the decision was made to slow down the cabins, which will help in those instances where there is a communication interruption to not have a severe level of swaying. We are still working, obviously, on fixing this problem entirely. The question, I guess, on everybody's mind is, with the tram slowdown, how long is it going to be in effect? And the answer really is, this is not a permanent change, but we couldn't tell you exactly how long it's going to be in effect. That's going to be up to DOL, it's going to be up to POMA, and us sort of all working collaboratively to figure out what's best, again, for rider safety and comfort. So that's where that situation stands at the moment. We've heard feedback about syncing the red buses up with the new tram schedule. We are working on that. To a large degree, it'll only amount to the drivers waiting about an extra minute or two at the tram station in order to pick people up. So we're working on that. Um, and again, I mean, this is something that we understand that it's not the most convenient switch. And while POMA and DOL are continuing to do testing on the cabins and the swing degrees, we'll keep everybody posted. And if we can get to a point where everybody's satisfied and we can sort of go back to the old schedule, and we'll absolutely do that as quickly as we can. Do you want Frank? I see Frank has his hand up. Do you?
Let me ask you one quick question first, just to clarify.
Sure.
So this is not your decision or POMA's decision, it's the Department of Labor's decision. I think that's what someone's told me recently.
Correct. And so to that end, Paul, thank you for actually reminding me of this. I dropped in the chat. We had a representative from POMA come to the last board meeting, Robbie, and he explained this in pretty good detail. And I dropped the link to that into the chat here. I encourage everybody to watch it, take a look. I think it's about the 10-minute mark where he comes in and really does a nice job of explaining the situation. Yes, ultimately it was the Department of Labor's decision. They've been very involved, and it's been very collaborative working with them. So, I think things are trending in the right direction, and ultimately what we have to do is just solve the overall problem. It'll probably involve a new communication system at some point for the entire tram cabin, but POMA has been updating components. And again, we have seen a pretty good reduction in the number of interruptions in the communication system just in the last 6 months. But it's not at zero yet, and that's the goal. And so that's what we're working towards.
Before we go to questions, can you also please update on where we are with the bus fleet, please?
Yeah, so bus fleet, again, trending in the right direction still. We are in most mornings, I think, getting 3 red buses in the shuttle out during rush hour service. We do have some hiccups here and there. We're in the process of hiring some new drivers because we're running into the point now where with the more buses we have on the road, if 1 or 2 drivers calls out sick, that presents a challenge for us, and so we want to beef up the staffing there. The health of the fleet is, it's going to remain on tenuous footing really until the 2 new buses reach the island, but we're in much better shape than we were back in August. I've seen, I think, a pretty significant decline in the amount of constituent service complaints that we've had come in about the red buses. Still kinks to work out, still things that we need to fine tune. We brought in, a new fleet manager on the personnel side. We brought in some new mechanics, and we're working on bringing in more mechanics. We just want to make sure that we never find ourselves in the situation that we fell into before. And the situation we fell into before was years in the making. And so we're trying to very quickly sort of catch up and fix a lot of those things in short order. I think we've done a pretty good job, and we're still heading, we're not there yet again, but we're heading in the right direction. And it's going to, once the 2 new buses reach the island, probably early 2025, we'll feel a lot better about things. But that's kind of where the red buses are at the moment.
Thank you. Any other updates from REOC before we go over to questions from people?
I do want to just really quickly mention the online ticket system that folks use to report problems to REOC. And this has been brought up in prior board meetings. That is going to be an obsolete system soon. It's not going to be supported anymore by the folks who run that system. So we're switching over to a new system called Brightly, and there will be future communications about this as well. It's going to work ostensibly the same way that the ticket system currently does, with the button on the homepage of the REOC website you can go to sign up and then report tickets. But just putting it on everyone's radar in the coming weeks, probably around December 1st, we're going to switch over from the old system to the new system. So you may have to re-register in order to use the new system, but it also should have some nice new features that the old system didn't have, putting pins on the map to help our teams find out where these issues are, maintenance grounds, security issues, safety issues, all that usually gets reported through that system. So just keep an eye out for future communications on that. We'll be switching over, I believe, around December 1st.
Thank you, Bryant. So I do want to come back and talk about the tram, but before we do that, let's go to Frank, who's had his hand up for a while.
Uh, Hi. Well, no, I was going to wait patiently until Brian spoke, and as the chair has suggested, wanted to hear all the topics. Good. So I do want to respond to both topics, both the tram and the bus. And as Brian had said, look at the video because I think that was an informative discussion. In that discussion, basically all the technical issues that I had raised and the causes were in fact confirmed by Leitner Poma. And the issue is, that they're using Wi-Fi in a place that's got 600,000 competing Wi-Fi signals and stuff like that, along with some other issues on that have to do with the tram stopping suddenly. Uh, so I spoke to the engineer. My understanding is they're going to work on fixing it, but as Brian had mentioned, it's Department of Labor that controls this, and I think that's where we still have another weakness because they're talking about speeding it up, and there's been no physics or mechanics analysis of this. So I think if it does stop, there's still potential hazards on that. So I'm going to ask the NTSB directly because I really think DOL, Department of Labor, just doesn't have the expertise to review that. Second point, which is on the bus service, I appreciate that the buses are coming, and I had made a point that they're not running until 2 a.m. I had spoken to what's it, Mary, the acting COO, and also Brian, who confirmed that they need 30 days to change the schedule on the drivers. So I'm expecting that to roll out. That's really important. And again, keeping the 15-minute schedule and all of that is really important for a lot of reasons. The last thing I'll say on this is that you have that white, I'll call it the shuttle bus, which has a 15 passenger capacity. I think it was 2:45 last Thursday or Friday. There was over 30 people in that bus. I think, that's unsafe and that's, I would say, illegal. I'm not sure, but that violates, the capacity of that. I'm not saying get rid of it, but that's not a good bus to send out during rush hour when you have that many people and everyone just literally packed, as sardines in that. So I encourage you to fix that quickly, so that its capacity and safety uh, are maintained. And good luck with the new drivers and the service. And I agree with you. Once we get the buses, things will quiet down. But in the meantime, schedule's important, and we still have not cracked the nut on with Department of Labor on this. I think, I'll be advocating that elsewhere. That's not something REAC fixes. That's something I think our legislators and whatever the state fixes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. So I want to move this on to another thing, another subject around the trams. I mean, there are two main issues. One is the speed, but one is the crowding. And people are getting very, very, very frustrated, Brian. And I think the best way I could frame this is that a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, when things were getting bad with the tram, there was an idea floated to put ad mesh around the cabin windows. In fact, the idea, I think, was to try one of them. And I think what you told me was that more people came out against that. And so that's why that idea wasn't pursued. So since that's happened, in my estimation, you now basically have a completely crowded platform and oftentimes going down outside the turnstiles from anything between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning onwards the whole day. So it's gotten a lot worse since we were first talking about that kind of idea. And that idea wasn't what we actually wanted, which was to have preferential boarding, but this is a good sort of common sense in between solution that might achieve the same thing that we wanted. So since that's last discussed, things have got much, much worse. A lot of people have changed their minds about that. And I'm here to say that I'm one of those people. I would now vote in favor of doing that. I think we should try that immediately as soon as we can on one of the cabins. It's impossible now. You know, in the mornings, at least you could have a few hours of respite where you could go with bags of shopping or with me with my bicycle. I wouldn't dare bring my bike on the tram now. So I've had to change how I do stuff. And it's just not, and the people, there's much more hardship for people who can't get around, people who have, strollers. It's very hard to live like this. So what I'd like to do is to have people raise their hands if anyone here wants to speak about this as well. I would ask you, you don't have to make the long speech about this. Just talk for 10, 15, or 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whether you like the idea or not. Let me start with Margie, please.
Okay, yeah, two things. I was always in favor of it, actually. I think it wasn't explained correctly at first. I think it made it sound as if we didn't want tourists. And I think with the right kind of marketing, you put up a sign that says Roosevelt Island welcomes tourists. If you want for the best picture photo op, take tram number 2 or whatever. And tourists would rather wait for the next tram than get on to the one that's kind of clouded over. So I would be in favor of doing that. But my question really was, have we given up the idea of getting preferential boarding for the residents? Because I don't think that's against the law, in spite of the fact that I've heard it twice. And I would hope that we have others lawyers looking at it, because the law says that you can't charge anybody more money than, and one resident more than another. They have to be charged equally. We are already paying the extra $2 million, the residents. So we're already getting charged more, in addition to not getting preferential boarding like you're allowed to give seniors and disabled. And I don't understand why residents can't be put in that too. So my own point is I'd get another legal opinion.
Thank you, Margie. I know somebody's having trouble with the raise hand function. Amy Nandar, can you please unmute Amy?
I just wanted to say a couple words about the tram issue. As someone who lives directly next to the tram, I do have the privilege of seeing in real time what it looks like. And I can tell you that far more extended hours now are entirely tourist. I take the tram whenever possible because it allows me access to my children's schools. Many people I know in Southtown work for the hospitals across the river. Some have housing from the hospitals and rely on the tram to go at the early hours of the morning, the late hours of the night. Obviously, those things are more schedule related in nature. People have been asking me constantly, when can I expect the next tram? We ask the operators, can they tell us when the next tram's coming? They don't know. But the major point is the tram has been written off actually by a lot of people, which is sad, especially if you live North Island. There's no point in traveling all that way and passing the subway to try to see a tram that's 2 trams backed up. So I think that's a sad state of affairs. I do recognize the complexity of the situation, but we definitely need to work urgently to find a solution that prioritizes our needs. I think AdMesh is great. I think priority boarding, both of those things. I didn't originally support AdMesh, but I'm on board with it now. Anything. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. The one person actually emailed in, so I'm going to read this one out. Fully understanding that it's difficult to do all these things, but I want this board to know that a new development. I've now witnessed a cohesive group of 40 to 50 tourists with one tour guide using the tram as part of an organized New York City tour. This was 5 at rush hour, which further annoyed and displaced Roosevelt Island residents coming home from work. If this continues and other large tour groups start to do this, the situation will really become, I think it's untenable already. Personally, I think obscuring the tram windows would go some way to deterring riders who just come in for the views. That's from Nicole Isaac. And also Ilana Moshkovitz, I hope that's right. Can't raise her hand. Can you please unmute Ilana?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Alana Moshavich. I grew up on Roosevelt Island and now also live here as an adult. So extensive experience with the tram. I have to say, not to be dramatic, I have never, ever, ever seen it in this state of just being completely overrun in tourists. I don't know what happened. We've been throwing around theories of whether it's TikTok or travel influencers, whatever it is, but it is to the point that in the past 6 months, myself, my husband, my mom, who still lives on the island, we just cannot take the tram because it means losing time. And that is an absolute shame. We live here. the tram is meant to be, and I still think there should be priority boarding for residents, students, people who work here, is to the point that, we're walking up to the tram hoping to get a nice ride home and end up going 10 minutes out of our way to walk to 63rd and Lex, go down however many floors under the river and have to get home that way. And I just don't think it's fair for residents to have to go out of their own way when there just has to be a system, whether again that's priority boarding, which sounds like there's a lot of legal kind of background to, or adding this ad mesh solution that some of the people on this call have suggested, which is really a shame because we ourselves obviously love to take advantage of the view, and that's a really nice perk living on the island. But it's gotten to the point where there are a few people here who have said, and more who will add to that even we are willing to sacrifice the view in order to just be able to get home, commute, get to and fro, and not have to wait 40 minutes and be packed in like sardines with tourists who fundamentally I don't think understand that this is actually a means of transportation and not an attraction.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Let's please unmute Sarah.
Hi, yeah, thanks. A lot of the same views as everyone else. I think that the tram is a pivotal part of living on Roosevelt Island, and it has gotten to the point at which it's no longer possible for me to take it to and from work or to the gym or all these other places where it's closest for me to take the tram to that space and not the subway. So I don't feel that it's fair to really count them as equivalent transportation options, because especially on the weekends, taking the subway is something that involves going down 3 broken escalators and then potentially waiting up to 20 minutes for a train that will come and then get you further away from your destination than the tram. And so I agree with AdMesh, priority boarding, whatever can be done to help prioritize residents. And I think if there could be anything too that helps tourists understand that this is something that's important to us and a method of transportation, not a tourist attraction, that would be good as well. I've had numerous conversations with tourists who have pushed me aside or, just been incredibly rude. And I've responded that this is a public transportation, and it just feels like they often don't understand that and are making the situation on the tram quite unsafe and just unusable for residents who it was supposed to be used for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very clear, Sarah. Thank you. I hope I said this right. Skylar, did I say it right?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I support the mesh. I also support priority boarding. Not much else to add. I like the way Margie explained. I didn't know that was the proposal until I heard it that way. I also think maybe having the mesh during certain hours to discourage people from using it during rush hour. And maybe additional messaging like signs or, I don't know, any other ways that people get messages to discourage people from coming during rush hours would help residents.
Thank you, Skylar.
That's all I have to add.
Thank you for sharing your views. Thank you. Frank,
Yeah,
please.
thank you.
Thank you again. Let me just pick up on Margie's points, because I think this has not really been tried, from a legal perspective in a hard enough way. I think there are 2 avenues. One is that if you go out, I believe, to some of the Fire Island ferries, they definitely have priority boarding for residents there. So you can get on, if you live there, you can get on, you can take luggage on. There are other places that have ferry service in other communities where residents do have priority. And I think from a legal perspective, there's obviously a reason why they can do it with the transportation system. And therefore, we should be able to do it. Second thing I would say on this is that if you take a look at the GDP, the General Development Plan, you'll see that the purpose of the tram is to provide transportation as part of the island's transportation and transit system there. That's clearly the priority, and that's not happening if it's now being overwhelmed by people with the what is it, visitors. And then the last thing I'll say is, in terms of putting some mesh across the windows and stuff, I think that's going to cause a variety of safety problems on that, because part of humans maintaining balance, their vestibular system, I know this because I'm a pilot and I need to teach passengers about this, is having a good sense of the horizon. And when you block that out, then you can induce motion sickness on that, and then add to it swaying. Just so I'm not in favor of obscuring the windows for safety reasons. Thank you.
So just so we're clear about what we're talking about before we have anyone else speak, my understanding is that this is not about blocking out the view at all, 100%. It's like the ad mesh that you get on some of the buses, where when you see out, you still see out fine, but it's not good enough and clear enough to want to take a photograph with. So it's not blocked out, it's like made fuzzy.
Okay, thank you for correcting that. Then that doesn't stop. I can tell you as a photographer, I still can get great photos through that, as I do. So I don't think that's uh, a discouragement to that. Thank you.
I would have thought at this point, what we want to do is try anything we can. I'm getting a sense from people, and there are more people.
I don't have any problem with that. It's as long as it's safe, and I'll go demonstrate on some of those ad buses. They still can get great views. Okay, thank you.
What I'm trying to do right now, I think, is quickly to summarize where I think we stand with people's views. I think broadly, people would like us to have priority boarding. We don't agree with the stance that Ryuk has taken. We can argue it. It's about one simple word in there. What's reasonable? And we would say, as a transportation system, it's reasonable to give us priority. But in the meantime, while we argue for that, I think it's much quicker to do something like this and give it a try. So I think that's where we stand right now. Let me go to Kev, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I gotta say, as a general rule for the black mesh solution, I'm not a huge advocate of making public transit less attractive for people. If we must use the mesh, is there any chance once things get back to normal that we can make our transit beautiful again by taking it out? Or we can use suction cup mesh and put them on only during rush hour only, as opposed to tinting it or something like we usually see in cars where it's more permanent. Because I personally don't think that this mesh where you can see through, and I know what you're saying on the bus, I don't think it's a big deterrent. I personally don't think so. Photographer two on the side, it's not going to stop anybody. But if the goal is to make transit residents happier and more easy to commute, priority access, if it's legal, it just seems like the best way, straight to the point. If the idea is to make us happy and make us our commute better, that's the way to do it. I take the tram with a stroller, a bike, and groceries, so I've been frustrated with this process too. But I just don't think that mesh is going to help as much as a priority access would be if it's legal, personally.
Thank you, Kev. I completely agree with that. I think the idea is that if we can't get the priority access, let's try this in the meantime. But yes, let's move on to the next person. Chloe, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with what everybody's saying, that the priority boarding is absolutely the best thing that we can have, and that in the meantime, the ad mesh is, I'm willing to try anything. It's a shame we have to give up our view as residents, but if that's what works, then to just make this an actual transportation option and not a tourist attraction, then I'm all in. And this isn't about the tram. I just have one quick question about subways, about red buses, if that's okay.
Of course.
When will all the red buses be on the tracking app? That's all. Thank you.
So right now we have 6, 8, 9, 10. Right now we got 5 red buses in and out of operation and the shuttle bus. Bus 6 was scheduled to be decommissioned, and we were able to put it back in service with some emergency measures. And basically the idea is to sort of run it until it doesn't have a ton of life left in it. So that one's probably never going to get the tracking, but we also just don't know how much time is left on that bus. The shuttle bus, we're looking into how long it'll take to get the tracking. When the 2 new buses reach the island, I believe they will already have the tracking installed on them. So it's probably not going to be perfect or, close to where we want it to be until those two new buses come. But right now, buses 11, 10, and 9 have the tracking. Maybe 8. I got to double check on 8. But I would say once we get the two new buses on the island, you can probably feel a little more confident about the accuracy of the transit app at any given time.
Thanks, Bryant. Let's go to Rick O'Connor, please.
Yeah, hi. So currently, above the seats on both of the tram cabins, at the top of the window, there is kind of like a mesh type of X's at the very top of the window. And that kind of blocks the view. You can see through the X's, but if you could put that same mesh on the windows, I'm wondering if that would be sufficient to make photographs unattractive for tourists to take, but at the same time would allow you to look out the window. So I'm wondering if it's possible just to add that same type of mesh to the windows to accomplish what everybody here is talking about in terms of obscuring the view for tourists. So that's number one. Number two is I was wondering, the Kevin Brown and Anthony Amorosa of the Public Safety Department, the chief and the deputy chief, have confirmed to me that the policy of REAC is to allow senior citizens and disabled people to have priority access to the tram, and also priority access to the elevator to get it so they don't have to wait on the line in order to use the elevator. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been getting emails from people, senior citizens and disabled people, who are telling me that the trams or some tram staff members are not aware of this, and they are refusing to allow seniors and disabled this priority access. So I'm just wondering if somehow REAC can spread the word among tram staffers to allow seniors and disabled to have preference, as is the policy of REAC.
And to add in PSD as well, to make sure all the PSD people are reminded of this.
Right.
In fact, so I'm going to ask you, Bryant, if you could let's not comment on the tram window stuff yet, but if you could just answer or make a comment about Rick's point, please, priority access.
Yeah, I would say the policy of REAC is a little firmer. What the deputy chief and the chief have said is if an elderly or disabled rider really needs help reaching the platform, if you talk to a PSD officer, they're going to help you get to the platform. And that's the way they've always sort of operated. It's, just about common courtesy and trying to be as helpful as we possibly can. There is some level of officer discretion in those instances. But yeah, I mean, if you need help getting the platform, and Chief Brown has always said this, and you speak with a PSD officer about it, the PSD officer will absolutely do what he or she can to help you reach the platform. There was another.
I think the issue on that one though is that that's not true for some of the people down the line, actual PSD patrol people, and certainly some of the staff. They need to be reminded of this because we know that, and the chief knows that, and you know that. But if they don't know it, then it doesn't help anybody.
Well, I mean, I'll reiterate it. I'm sure the chief has said it to his officers time and again. And one other thing that we've sort of brought up recently with POMA, well, not recently, brought it up several times, is trying to have them be a little more active and engaged on the platform with the POMA station attendants. We'd like them to be a little more visible. We've made that clear to our partners over there. Hopefully they can, keep a better eye on things and also be helpful in those instances where certain people need a little assistance on the tram. We're looking to see more involvement from them as well. So that's something else that we have pushed. Paul, I know we've talked about that before, and
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, can I just follow up on that, please?
Yes, of course.
My understanding, though, is it was more than just. My understanding was it was a general rule or general policy that if you're just a senior or if you are disabled, you can have access, priority access. You don't need to make a case that you have something in addition to being disabled or a senior citizen. And the way you just explained it, Bryant, was that it appeared to me as though you were saying you need to show something more than just being a senior or just being disabled. I was wondering if you could clarify that.
No, I'm not saying you need to show something more necessarily, but when we're using the words like policy, like this is something that's written in stone somewhere, that's not really the case. But what I'm trying to get across is, if you are senior, a senior citizen who needs help reaching the platform, or you are, a disabled resident, PSD officers are there to help and to make sure that we can get you as safely as we can to and from the island. So that's all I was saying. I'm not saying you have to plead a case or prove something to somebody, but it's the officers are there to help and do the best they can, and hopefully those who need it will take advantage of it, and those who may not need it will allow those who need it to continue to take advantage of it.
Yeah, but it's more, I mean, the PSD seems to be adhering to that. It's more the tram staff, the POMA employees that don't seem to have gotten the word.
Well, I mean, we can reiterate it again with the POMA folks and let them know. Obviously from our end, we have an easier time, controlling what the PSD officers are doing in the day-to-day. But we'll make sure that the tram operators and the folks in the cabin know that we want to make sure we're looking out for seniors and disabled riders. And I mean, it goes back to the same thing as slowing the tram cabin down. We want the ride to be as convenient and comfortable as it can be, especially for those riders. That's who we're sort of thinking about in earnest when we talk about safety and comfort. So we can circle back with POMA about that as well.
Thank you.
Let's have Simina, please.
Thank you. So I too have actually been a resident for many years, growing up here as a child and now raising my own family here. And the tram has really always been a reliable and scheduled source of transportation for the island. And it's changed just so drastically in the last few years. It's kind of crazy to see. So obviously really support what everyone's saying about the priority boarding. As a resident, that should be a given. The mesh, I think, is a good idea. And I love the idea of it being temporary potentially. I do think that it needs to be in both cabins. However, if you don't have it in both cabins, I think you're going to create potentially more issues for residents, in that they're only going to have one tram that they're going to be taking. So it'll be like longer wait times if they're only waiting for that one tram, and all the tourists are all going on the tram that doesn't have the mesh. And I think you're going to create potentially more logistical issues for people. And then the last point I wanted to bring up, and I don't know how much of this has been talked about on the schedule, where the tram used to be, people loved the tram, and that it was always every 15 minutes. You knew it was on the hour. You knew you could get there, run for the 15-minute tram and make it and be home quickly. Now, not having a schedule is, really crazy to me. And knowing that on an hourly schedule, you could do either every 10-minute or either every 12-minute and still be on a set hourly schedule, it seems like one of those could have been a better option than this 10.5-minute that is no schedule. But if it's every even 12 minutes, I think people would more generally know, okay, well, at 10:24, I can always make a tram. At 10:36, I'm always going to have a tram. And that would potentially go back again to what the benefits of the tram were, that they're reliable and there's a schedule.
Well, I mean, so there is a schedule, and I can share it with you afterward.
Yeah, that one, like it's at this. Oh, I have to look back. Oh, at the 11 o'clock hour, is it?
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, look, ultimately, the hope is we just get back to the old schedule, when we can. I'm not exactly sure when that will be. That's sort of out of our hands at the moment. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And
can I jump in with one thought? Look, I think what you're saying now is it's 10.5 minutes. Is it possible for you all to go back to the Department of Labor and say, hey, would it still make you comfortable if we made it 10 minutes, the speed that gives us every 10 minutes. Because that way, if you have it at 10 minutes, 20, 30, everyone's a little bit clearer on when the thing's coming. And if that's slow enough still for the Department of Labor, we get a little bit of something out of this.
And again, sorry, the same way that you started, Paul, with, the mesh, maybe people didn't like that initially, they didn't like it. I bet that you might get more people who say, you know what, even if it's every 12 minutes and it's, a minute and a half less, but I'm on a schedule and I know the schedule and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to go consult some like printout that's, showing me 50 numbers. People might prefer that too. Again, the 10 would obviously be the most logical. It's just 30 seconds. Like I don't think that difference in speed should make that big of a change, but I don't know that. But even if that's not possible, 12 would be more logical. And I think people would prefer it, but you'd have to, see what the people say, I guess.
So I guess we have an ask from this. Our ask from this meeting tonight, Bryant, is for REOC to go to POMA and the Department of Labor and ask, would every 10 minutes be okay in terms of speed to make you guys comfortable? Can we move to that? That's a specific question from this board tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can certainly ask.
And thanks, Samina, for speaking up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Herta, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. So, thank you. So, there's so many things I would like to say, but I think the most important one is that I just don't see the logics. I live here since 10 years on the island, of how it could happen that there has been such an advertisement to make all these tourists come on the tram, and there's so much more people now here, and there's not much more transport. So the proportion between the amount of people coming to the island and going back to Manhattan, Second Avenue, and then there is no means of transportation, not even talking about how it was before. But I still would like to understand how this can happen, because someone has programmed this. Someone has programmed to make these people come and visit the island without having thought of the adequate transportation. That's one question out of many.
Yeah, the simplest answer I can give you, I think all I've seen is that there are a lot of people out there, YouTubers, who have these travel channels, and a lot of people now include a trip on the tram in their top 10 list of things to do in New York City, oftentimes near the top. I think it's gone exploded recently. That's my understanding of why we're getting so much that's going on right now. And people then talk about it, then people do it and they post on. Do you have any other questions for Brioc or anything, please?
No, that's the other thing was that was a minor one regarding schedules. So what happened to me in the last weeks a few times was that surprisingly the red bus was there. So by the way, in the morning I never take I live by the Good Shepherd Church, so I always walk down there because I gave up. Coming back, taking the bus, I experienced that a few times. The bus was standing still with the people inside for 5 to 10 minutes. So I asked him why, what, and he said, yeah, it's the schedule. So I was surprised to experience this.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go next to Craig, please.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. If I could just ask, I jumped in late. What was the story with the mesh? What is that going to do?
The idea is to have something that blocks out the window to enough of a degree that people won't want to take pictures, tourists, but it won't be so nauseating that you'll feel uncomfortable riding it. I think it's like some of the tourist buses you can see around Times Square. They have mesh.
So that I probably heard. Okay, and then could I ask why are we waiting for the tram to take off? The guys there said they have to charge the battery longer because some kid complained that that it was moving too quickly, and now it takes double as long to get across the river. Is that what the story is?
Brian's actually, yes. Brian, can you do 10-second version of
Why
it?
would one kid get say over everybody else? I mean, you're standing out there when winter comes, it's going to be freezing.
So
No, that part of it is nothing. It had nothing to do with one kid or anything like that.
That was the
Basically, the
article in
long
the
and short
Post,
of it
right?
is that we had some instances of heavy swaying. It's dating back to a year due to interruptions in the onboard communication system between the cabins and the stations. We are working on fixing that and reducing that. But one of the things that we are doing, the Department of Labor has asked us to do, is to slow the tram cabins down so that if there are those communications interruptions and the tram goes into a controlled stop in midair, it will reduce the instances of heavy swaying, making it safer and more comfortable for riders, specifically senior and disabled riders. Was that a good 10-second?
That was very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, just at night, because I go there 4 days a week to play tennis. And when there's only one tram running, you could wait 20 minutes easily, 20 plus, to get over. At least 20 minutes. Well, it used to not be that. Because they're busy charging the tram.
Yes, part of it is sitting in the station longer to charge the onboard batteries for the system. That's all part of the slowdown as well.
My understanding, though, is once they kick the heat on, it's going to be worse because they're going to have to charge even more so.
I have not heard that.
Well, they haven't talked about it yet because it's not been called yet. So if you're using more battery power to control the heat, then you're going to have to use more battery power to have to charge. So it's going to take longer to charge the batteries, so it's going to slow down the schedule even more.
I'll ask that question of Poma. Nobody's talking about slowing it down any further.
Well, not on purpose, because they probably haven't mentioned about the heat.
Craig, I think Brian's giving an answer, so thank you.
Sure. I'll go. I think if they just requested it instead of demanded it, I don't think you should listen. I don't see why they would have any say. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just in charge.
Thank you very much, Craig. Let's move on.
All right, welcome.
Hi, Paul. Want to make sure you called on me before I guess I unmuted myself already. But I wanted to just go back to the question about senior and disabled boarding. I'm not a senior, but I'm not able-bodied and I have like physical limitations. They're not immediately visible, especially if I'm not using my cane. I'm also like not an older person, which tends to be what people expect. And I'm not particularly interested in like having to plead that case. I'm frankly very uncomfortable talking about it in public at a community board meeting. I'm not really interested in explaining like my medical history to anybody to try to get on the tram. And while I do have very fond memories of taking the tram for fun, especially as a kid, right now I take it because I have to. And I take it because sometimes the F is a 17-minute wait, which is absurd, but that's neither here nor there. The station's also absurdly deep, and the escalators are out half the time. The elevators are absolutely backed up and crowded. And then you get to 63rd Street, and you still have to take, 8 flights of stairs to go up. And I think that's just a ridiculous burden to put on people. And I'm not interested in having to like fight a family from out of town who wants to take nice Instagram videos. Like my patience is completely done, to be honest. And I love New York. I love that we're welcoming. I love that people want to take the tram, but I really don't care anymore when I'm trying to get to work or the pharmacy. I'm trying to find a new physical therapist, and I don't want to have to decide like, oh, should I pick the best physical therapist that's in my healthcare, or should I pick what's closest to the train? Since the good one on 3rd Avenue that's near the tram, I shouldn't count on that because I'm not allowed to I'm not allowed to take the tram because there's like a whole family pushing me out of the way on the tram. And I just think it's really disrespectful that I live here and I can't get home from where I am. And I'm not interested in having to like put on anything to like demonstrate that I have a need to get on the train. People already give me dirty looks when I take the elevator, and no public safety person has ever said anything about priority boarding. I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody do it. If they have, that's great. I've never experienced it. I'm not interested in being like, hey, look, my knee is hugely swollen today. Can I please get on the tram so I can get home and sit down? So I know you've probably been hearing a lot of frustration, but it's truly through the roof. And my quality of life has been massively negatively impacted by this experience. So I don't care what you do. I don't care if you ban all tourists, you do priority boarding. I don't care if you black out the windows. I don't care. I just want to be able to take it and be safe and comfortable getting to and from where I need to go because I can't swim across the East River, unfortunately.
Okay,
If
thank
you
you
have
for
any
making
questions,
your
happy to
case.
answer them.
No,
Or any
thank you for making your
follow-ups.
case so passionately, Kate. I want to jump in with one thing first before Brian answers. We discussed this a few months ago when it was the F train shutdown and things were going really bad with the tram. I remember us having a discussion on this community board meeting, Brian, where the suggestion was that RIOC would investigate whether we could have some sort of pre-registration where we could go to PSD and register, say, because my knees go sometimes. I don't want to have to beg with a PSD person saying I don't want to walk up the stairs and you shouldn't have to do that, but this is a very elegant solution to avoiding all that unpleasantness. There'd be a registry kept at PSD. We get a little piece of paper or whatever it is, we get something on the phone. It's not hard to do. It's a one-time registration, and then we can show that to whoever's standing, whether it's somebody at the tram operator or whether it's somebody at PSD. So I'd like you to think about that one as well, please. Brian, if we could resuscitate that. Nothing seems to have happened with that one.
Well, because I think there was some concerns with, sharing healthcare information and it kind of going back to what Kate just said, where
But if it's up to officer discretion about whether or not I'm considered disabled enough to take the elevator, I don't see how that's any more like invasive. I think it's more disrespectful to have to do it live. I'd much rather register something ahead of time and just show them instead of having to like publicly then in front of everybody at the tram try to explain the case that like I have enough problems to get on the elevator.
Yeah, just to be clear what we're talking about, this is something that RIOC would make available to people. So if somebody doesn't feel comfortable going to register for this, they don't have to. But for those of us who'd want to do this, I would sign up in a heartbeat because it avoids having the really unpleasant conversation I don't want to have. I never want to try and beg. And my thing goes away. It just comes and goes. So again, we'd like this brought up, please, with RIOC. If we can do something like this, there are a lot of people on this island who need this kind of assistance. And in particular, given you can see the frustration from someone like Kate. And Kate decided to spend some time here. This is an unusually packed meeting. And probably for every Kate, there's another 10 people who didn't have the chance to come and speak on this issue. So I'm going to ask you,
or didn't feel
please.
comfortable opening up about their medical issues with people. I'm not particularly happy to discuss it right now, and I really don't want to have to, but I would much rather be able to get on the tram. Sorry. Thank you, Paul. I think anything is a good idea at this point.
Thank you. I'll just leave it with you, Brian. You've got no magic answers today, I'm sure. Right?
I don't. Listen, a lot of this comes down to what is legal and what isn't legal, and I'm not a lawyer. We have had lawyers look into this, spanning multiple administrations, I'm told, across the RIOC. They do not believe that the priority boarding is legal because it is a public transportation, public carrier. I can't see that position changing anytime soon. Even Paul will go back to, I think you had a joint meeting with your CB8 transportation chair not that long ago, and he thought the priority line wasn't going to be legal.
Right, but I want to be clear what we're talking about here. We're not talking about that specific thing right now. Yes, we would all love priority boarding for residents here. We're talking about something entirely different. We're working with the assumption here that the PSD people and the tram operators will give priority boarding to people who have disabilities or who are old or infirm or otherwise. All we're talking about here is making it unembarrassing for people to take advantage of that by RIOC administering something whereby we can have something on our phones or a piece of paper which we can pre-register for, so we don't have to do this awful, embarrassing thing of begging to go up a lift when we shouldn't have to do that. I'm not talking about the whole priority boarding thing. We're not talking about that.
Well, plenty of people are talking about it, but I
for
hear
this
what you're
specific
saying.
thing we're asking you to do, I'm asking you if please RIOC can look at having some sort of pre-registration voucher system for people who are older or are not fully abled. And if you can put aside the discussion about full priority boarding, for this purpose, that's what we're asking for. It's a different thing.
I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. Just so I keep track with you, I'm asking a lot of you, but there's the 10-minute tram thing I've asked for. or we've asked for. Secondly, there's the disability issue we just spoken about. And of course, we're going to ask you to go back and have a good think about the mesh or something to obscure windows. That'll be the third thing, but let's have other people have a join in as well. Zach.
First on the ad block or the shades or anything like that, and or the priority boarding, especially for senior citizens or disabled people, I fully support either option. Whatever can get it so that can make it so that people that need to take the tram for work, who live on the island, or need it for disability's sake or anything like that, can get on the tram before people pushing me, even me, I'm not a small guy, out of the way so they can get their picture out the window. And it's kind of the etiquette on the tram from the tourists from tourists or people coming in from out of town don't necessarily meet up with good proper etiquette for anyone. Any form of transportation. I don't care if you're on the metro, the tram, or in a taxi or anything like that. But one question I did have in regards to the tram, especially with the slowdown, was there any talk or study by Palmar, Department of Labor, or anything like that on the effects of slowing down the tram, especially on wind shear and torque from the motors? Because even now, when the wind isn't that heavy, going over the river in the morning, the tram does move back and forth side to side. Not shaking as we've seen like on the pendulum, but actually rotating from the wind going over the river. And that is something that will be a concern, especially if the wind pick up in the winter. Now, is that something that was looked at?
That's I'm sure Poma has looked into all of those things at some point or another. I mean, the tram's been running now under this Poma system since 2010. So, it's gone through several, winters where.
Yes, but
you're saying with the slowdown, would that affects it more?
Yes. You leave the space open for more time for the wind to affect it and leaving it open for more force to be imparted on it.
I see what you're saying. I can ask Poma about it. I don't know that, but they have engineers that are obviously on site and working on these things. To my knowledge, that hasn't been raised as a concern. So I'm not sure it is, but I can look into it and try to get back to you on that.
Zach, could you drop your email into the chat, which won't be seen by everybody here, just be seen by, I guess, Will and Rose, and they could pass it to Bryant.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great, thank you. Next, please, Raphael. Can't hear you, but continue.
There we go. Alrighty. Thanks for having me here, everyone. Raphael, I'm a resident of 30 River Road. I'm really coming here as a concerned parent, specifically with the tram. So I just want to triple underscore, not only look for those that are disabled and are elderly, but also for parents. It is exceptionally difficult to get on a tram with a newborn baby and a 30-pound-year-old baby, or a 30-pound baby, sorry, a 2-year-old, and literally be fighting with tourists who have no etiquette. So going to the solution, because I'm sure y'all have heard enough problems. One, I think a potential solution could be just having a sign up expressing, just show basic etiquette for X, Y, and Z people in need. Secondly, I wonder if more crowd control could be put in place, because even the officers who do control the elevators have been, I would say, a tad disrespectful, but also just not acknowledging that people who have strollers live on the island. And I'm just speaking up for the 200 or so moms and dads in our WhatsApp group who continually express this, that it's just very tough handling a toddler and a young baby while being pushed aside by tourists. So I wonder if some sort of sign or anything around crowd control would help that. Thank you.
Thanks very much for speaking tonight, Raphael. Anna, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, my name's Anna. I'll keep it short. I think everyone's made great points. I live at 425. I want to underscore that I agree with the point that was just made. I have a 2-year-old. It's quite a thing when you're alone and you're not a very big person and you have a 2-year-old and you're trying to navigate all this. I support the screens. I support I do think that the definition of reasonable has been discussed at length, but I think that we need to sort of take more legal steps to re-examine the possibility of doing priority boarding. I also am wondering if there's, like, in addition to talking to RIAC, if there are other steps that we as a community can take. If I know there was a petition that went around. If there's a lawsuit option, I know Julie Menon, our councilwoman, is sort of concerned about this. I wonder if there's sort of other political actions that we should be taking to advocate for priority boarding for residents. I'm not familiar with the sort of local politics of this, but I thought that's sort of an open question. And I just wanted to also speak very quickly about the concern of a previous speaker that having mesh that would be insufficiently transparent would cause a safety issue. I'm an MD, and I actually also have a disorder of the vestibular organ, so I actually know a lot about this. And I think that even if you were completely blacking out the tram, it would be a little bit less pleasant to travel, and some people will get motion sick, but I don't think there's any sort of severe medical consequences to that. And I think at the point that we are right now, the residents of Roosevelt Island would rather travel in a fully blacked out box than not be able to get to Manhattan and to drop off kids at daycare and to go to work.
Thank you so much, Anna. That's really helpful.
And I'm happy to see so many people engaging with this issue.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Anna. It's really helpful. Thank you so much. I hope I get it right, one of those two. Unmute again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Hi,
yeah, so, thanks so much for exploring this issue about the tram. It's really, become a serious issue for all of us who live here. I'm just wondering, and I was a little late, and I apologize if, you went over this, but in terms of the legalities, I guess, of priority access, from what I understand, the issue is that you can't restrict transportation. Is that what it is?
Yeah, ostensibly, you can't create any type of situation where one class is being treated better than the other.
Okay.
And that's what it would come down to from the legal reading that, our lawyers have done on this.
Okay. So what's happening right now, again, from our viewpoint, and, you can kind of, I guess, look at it in a lot of different ways, but from our viewpoint, that is actually happening. So residents are actually being restricted from doing their daily activities, from going to and from work, from doing, basic daily necessities, transportation, in favor of tourists who are using it not as transportation, but as an attraction or entertainment. So is that a possibility of, kind of going back and saying, well, this is what we're talking. We're not saying that they can't use it. We're saying that priority access or, restricted hours, rush hour, things like that, so that we can, operate as a community and we're not restricted.
I'm not a lawyer. I think that's a difficult legal case to make, because ultimately, like right now at the tram, there's no restrictions on who can or can't go at any given time. It's free and open to anybody. So, I think it sounds like it would be a kind of a lot of legal gymnastics to make that case. But I mean, I hear you, and I understand that, the situation is difficult. Look, I mean, I live in northern Westchester. My commute is an hour and a half each way every day. It's not pleasant. I understand that. And this is a situation where, quite frankly, going back to the question of how, I think it is one of those deals where, as social media has become more prolific, this has become something that people want to engage with and want to, it's viewed differently. And, we agree that it's often unpleasant, that the tourists can be, not particularly respectful. I understand that if there's any type of added signage, we can try to add. We have added some on the tram platforms in the past. I'm interested in those things too. It's probably not going to do much. I don't know that the mesh blockout would do anything either. Ultimately, that's, if you're coming and you want to ride the tram, you're probably going to do it no matter what is going on there. It's something to explore. Going back to what Paul said earlier, when this was broached, I guess in February maybe or March. It was not particularly well received, the idea, by the community. It sounds like that's changed to some degree. I don't think you could do it like it was suggested on one cabin, because I think that would create a whole lot of other problems, just in terms of people all of a sudden waiting on the platform and then they're not loading in and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of logistical things to consider with all of that. But I'll take it back internally, and we'll see what we can think about. I certainly have a laundry list of things after this meeting that are.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
just to give you some perspective, I work on East 84th Street. It takes me an hour, maybe an hour, 10 minutes. And that's the transportation situation on Roosevelt Island. You live in Westchester, it takes you a little longer. So this is approaching a transportation crisis. We haven't even talked about the F, which is abysmal. The service is abysmal now. So we really do depend on the tram. And the residents are being left out in the cold. We are being restricted. And I think, this is something we're going to have to push. And maybe, as a community, we'll decide how to do that, because it really does seem like there's some sort of wall where they are not willing to listen or change at all, despite, the growing, the growing cry from residents. And that's building a lot of frustration, just so you know.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Bree. Look, I want to say a couple of words before we go on to the final person speaking on this subject. It's been fantastic to see so many people. I've counted 20 people who've spoken about this issue. And so you made a comment before, Brian, you think people's views have changed to some degree. I think they've changed dramatically in the last few months. That's what this evening should show you. So yes, what I'd love it is if people who come and spoken today, please come back again next month. Please bring other people with you. But specifically, Brian, I'm going to ask you on those three things that we've got written down to come back and report to this group of people. So I think we're going to have so much more engagement now if we can actually get people with answers on some of these things at the next meeting, or to at least give a progress report of where we are with this. So I see this meeting changing shape quite a lot, given how many people have turned up today to speak on this issue. I don't see this as a speak up today and then don't bother coming again, and maybe at some point something will happen. I see this as being very much different to that. People are going to come back again and again, and we're going to make this much more of the community getting engaged. That's my feeling at this point. Let's move on to Raphael. One last quick thing, Raphael, please. We have to move on.
Yep, just one quick thing. Could we please add a written correspondence to those follow-ups? Thank you, Reeve, for bringing up that point. I would really like to see in writing what's specifically being proposed around the legality. We have to push on this. It is not enough to just say we have to jump through the hoops. Like, I would really love to see this in writing as to what is being talked about and discussed with these lawyers.
So my
anything can be
suggestion,
legal.
So I didn't mean to cut you off.
So just as the final point here, because we are a very passionate community, and this is only going to get worse. I would really beg to see anything in writing that is being proposed, and I would like to see the correspondence so that we can dig into the specific arguments that are being made. It is very easy for this to be put on a table and then brushed aside, depending on how it is framed. So please come back with a written correspondence for what was put forward.
So Raphael, what I can suggest is Rick O'Connor. I think you're on this Zoom still. Rick, I know I can see your name there. I'm not sure if you. So I'm going to ask Rick. Has
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Hey Rick, do you think you could drop into the chat so that can be sent around to everybody else? Your story, which you did most recently about the different arguments about this whole subject of priority boarding. I think you dropped it to me recently. Can you drop it in there, please?
Yeah, I mean, I have to find it. I don't think I can find it in the next couple of seconds, but I can send it to you, and if you want to distribute it,
To be honest, it's very hard for me to distribute to this group of people. So if in the next 3 or 4 minutes, if you could drop it in there, they'll just send it round.
All right, I'll see if I can find it.
Thank you, Rick.
But I mean, I've done articles in the past about REACT's legal rationale for this and how I think it's incorrect. But yeah, I'll look for it.
I think that's the most helpful.
Do you want our legal rationale dropped in the chat from last year?
I've asked for that. If you guys can provide the legal analysis, that would be
we had that statement that went out last year.
Yes. Yeah,
Right,
Rick had that included, I think, in his.
but the statement was just conclusory, just saying, we found it to be illegal. It didn't go into your analysis of why you think it is unreasonable to create a separate line for residents and resident workers and non-residents. If you could provide that analysis, that would enable people to understand better how you came to that conclusion.
Paul, I'm trying to drop this in the chat, but it's not going through.
Can you drop it to Rose or to CB8?
I'll email it.
Thank you. Let's move on, folks. Thank you, everybody. Time is pressing on. Just a warning. So for Amy and Rosanna and also for Kev, I'm going to ask you all to keep your stuff very tight, please. People have sort of, I try to keep these meetings down to an hour if I can. We're going to hit an hour and a half, I think. I think there should be straightforward discussions, I hope. Very quickly first, Brandon, anything quickly on the library?
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
On a lot more wholesome note, at least I hope. We have a bunch of new programs and some longstanding programs this month. We have coming up on the 6th, we have a new release film screening for the new Quiet Place movie. That's happening at 5 p.m. in our community room. I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to see it, but we recently upgraded our community room. We got a new state-of-the-art projector, a new speaker system. My daughter here. We also just started a new Scrabble group that's happening on Fridays at 12 p.m. And then very much apropos of this meeting, we have what's called an idea generation session that's sponsored by CEC, the Civic Engagement Commission. It's going to be an idea generation session to see how city budget could be spent on a community need. So I'm hoping that we could, it's kind of short notice, the 15th at 12 p.m. But if you are interested, I encourage you to come with your ideas. There's going to be a representative from CEC that's going to be leading the session. And it's going to be about participatory budgeting and how we could use some of that city funds to fill some kind of community need. You could register over the phone or in person at the library. We're capping it at around 25 people. If you can't register, you're free to show up that day, but there is no guarantee that you will be admitted. Other than that, we have Historical Society redeveloping Roosevelt Island, Northtown 50 years later with the Historical Society. That's happening Tuesday, November 19th at 6:30. And then also new this month that just started, we have a new writer support group. That's happening on Wednesday, November 20th at 5:30. No writing, previous writing experience is necessary. We will provide prompts and then all share out. I'm going to drop a link to our events for the month in the chat to the hosts, and I'm hoping they could share it out to everyone else. And you could always find us online just by typing in mypl.org, Roosevelt Island, and get the latest of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so lucky to have the library with you all. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any updates for the community? Any events you want folks to know about? Otherwise, let's move on to oh yes, Rick. Thank you.
Paul, I put it in the chat. I'm not sure if you got it.
It won't come through yet, but that's because Rose or Will have to grab it and put it in the real chat for all of us, but it'll come.
All right.
Thank you, Rick. Can we please unmute Amy and Rosanna?
Hi, I'll try to keep this brief. I'm speaking on behalf of the community, dog owners, and parents today. We're pretty concerned about the poisonings that we've experienced on Roosevelt Island. There have been 4 dogs that I know of who have been exposed to some sort of neurotoxin, possibly around Duane Reade. 3 of them, I believe, or Southtown. Sorry, it's bedtime here. So essentially, I know that DEC came in and investigated, but it seems like the investigation may have stopped by asking just the REAC grounds crew if their practices were safe. And I think the issue goes a lot further. than just satisfying whether what REAC does is safe. We have a lot of stakeholders, landowners, building managers, Cornell, REAC's contractors, all the related buildings, etc., are all potential sources of this poison. I have a dog, I have children who are vulnerable, and I'm hoping we can work together to get some kind of answers. I have, everybody's reported to DEC, REAC, PSD, and I'm just hoping we can continue to pursue this a little further. I also spoke with Rosanna, who can fill us all in on the issue in more detail over the years. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Amy. Rosanna?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Paul. Regarding rodenticides and pesticides is a long time issue that we have been fighting as a community at all. What I would like to say that is very important is that at one point, about 10 years ago, we had a sort of agreement with REAC where REAC would use only organic products and staying away from rodenticides of, I try not to use technical generation 1 or generation 2 rodenticides. So the generation 2 is the stronger one, which should kill the rats with one bait. But to be very concise on the issue, it doesn't work in that way. First of all, the bait stations, just as a clarification to all the ones who are not familiar with them, are those black plastic containers that you can see left and right on the island around residential areas or public areas. So public areas is the most vulnerable, obviously, because public areas is where not only our pets, I am a dog owner as well, not only our pets walk around, but our children sit and adults sit to picnic, to just spend time sitting in the grass. And guess what? The rodents that have access to those bait stations is not that they go in the bait station and drop dead after taking a chunk of the block or the pellets or grains or whatever other form, because they come with different forms. So no, they take it away and they chew on it while walking away. So then we have several side effects to that. One is obviously that the grains and the crumbles stay on the grass where our children sit, where we sit, where our dogs walk, and where wildlife also feed. So basically, rodenticides are devastating our wildlife, but they are also poisoning our pets, because this year alone, actually this summer, these past months alone, there have been 3 cases in our community of dogs intoxicated due to poison access or whatever is the case. So this is alarming. And this is very much alarming, especially if we look at the number of children that these are studies that you can find all over the internet from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. And you can see how many children have got in touch with that poison. And not to mention, of course, wildlife. You all have heard about Flaco, who became very famous, the owl who died to rodenticide, and Flaco is not alone. So several, I said, I'm sorry, thousands of animals die every year due to rodenticide misusage. So going back to the issue that I was mentioning before, we had an agreement with REAC where in public area, and I believe at that time the administration was led by President Charlene Indelicato. So because there was a death actually of a dog at that time, and then several poisoning of dogs at the same time, so products had to be used in our green areas as surrounding. And that included also, of course, public areas. So unfortunately, with the years, something has changed. So we are back to where we were 10 years ago. So there is the SGAR, the second generation of rodenticides being used by residential and residential buildings, like Amy mentioned before, all residential buildings. So Manhattan Park, related buildings, anywhere you can see those black, is that they are not even labeled. So I went, and of course I called DC myself several times. I have several reports from inspectors of DC, and I have been doing it every year about rodenticides, about the dead squirrels, the dead birds. Every year there is the same thing. So there is no label. The regulations that DC mandates is that each of those boxes have to come with the label, with the date, what is inside, a warning if placed in public area. So those boxes have to be also secured to the ground, so they cannot be moved. If a child goes and try to move, it cannot be moved. So anyway, looking at many of those boxes, the majority is not respecting the regulations. The other thing is that is very important, and as the EC mandates, we can ask for the label, we being the community, the residents, we can ask for the label that indicates the ingredients of the poisons or different type of poisons that are in those boxes. But most importantly, we need to know, we must know, because even dog walkers walk dogs around. Obviously, they look and be careful, and they're very careful when walking the dogs. But if there is not a warning label, a warning flag that tell us all, including the dog walkers, of course, that there is a poison in that particular area, there is no way that you can stay away from that. And yet, the crumbs will still be around the public area. So this is a very, very sensitive issue. And as I said, it relates not just to wildlife, which is already enormous, but also to and to our pets, of course. Excuse me, but I am.
Hey, Rosanna, can I ask you, sorry to interrupt you, we're running late tonight.
Yes.
Do you think there's any way you could summarize in the next like 30 seconds what the 1 or 2 or 3 things you would ask of REOC, so we can be very clear what those things are? So one, it sounds like one is to make sure they're labeling the boxes properly and making sure they're following all the rules, right?
Right.
Anything else?
Well, actually, that would be the contractor.
Okay.
Hires contractors to place those stations. So they have to make sure that the contractor apply rules. So the contractors, when placing pesticides or rodenticides, whoever is the contractor, because contractors for pesticides are often different by contractors for rodenticides products, but either or even REOC employees, when placing those, they have to ensure that there is a warning, a large label, like in many neighborhoods we see. There are visible flyers or warning signs around the area, and you can read it, and you know.
So first thing is big warning, visible signs. Anything else to wrap up? Anything else?
Absolutely, yes. Avoiding avoiding non-organic products, because that means poison, obviously, and that gets into the ground. We don't have much time, but obviously the poison doesn't kill only the birds, the squirrels, and the dogs. It also goes into the ground, so in the water that we drink, in the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it would be interesting to get in greater details about it. But for now, what we all ask is for RIOC, please, to avoid usage of killer pesticides and rodenticides, especially when unnecessary or over placing those boxes. The same thing should apply to the various realtors, managements, etc. on the islands, to every building, including the schools.
So the two things, it's the signage, the big signs, big warning signs, what is proper signage on the boxes. And also the second thing is avoiding non-organic products in these rodenticides and other chemicals. Thank you, Rosanna. I'm sorry to rush you, but we had such a lot of people speaking before, the time's getting on. Thanks, Rosanna. Let's move on to the final item tonight. Kev, are you free to speak still? Kev,
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Kev, all yours.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Thanks for listening, everybody. I would like to talk about a different issue. I want to talk about an issue that affects many of us, smoking in public spaces, specifically in public parks, and especially in the courtyard by the church. After speaking with other parents, I found that we share similar experiences. We're being driven out of shared spaces, including parks and whatnot, by clouds of cigarette or marijuana smoke. While smoking is technically banned in playgrounds already, I believe, the enforcement seems to be very, very weak. This isn't just a matter of personal choice for the smokers. Secondhand smoke is a serious public health risk, especially for young children, which we have many on the island. Their lungs are especially vulnerable, and they deserve to play and explore in clean, safe air. Not to mention the litter of cigarette butts everywhere. That's a completely different issue. I've seen our beautiful turkey chewing on one of them, squirrels taking them and putting them in trees. It's destroying our wildlife, since we were just speaking about wildlife. Unfortunately, it feels like enforcement really isn't a priority. Just recently, there were two people smoking marijuana in a running car near school, right by the Roosevelt Island PD station. When I reported it, they were very dismissive of my concerns and even incorrectly claiming that it was legal, stating that anywhere you can smoke marijuana, you can smoke cigarettes, which is not the case in vehicles. It's very, very clear, black and white, but very dismissive. But I'm not going to stop because clean air is essential. So my question to everyone is, how can we work together to ban this and actually enforce smoking places? Like, something near and dear to me is the church courtyard, because I spend so much time there and I love it. But until we get kicked out by the smokers, just like 5 days ago, 5 days ago, I made a change.org petition and recently received many signatures from parents. I would love to share it when on the chat later. I got some parents to also speak tonight, and they're here today, so I would love to give them a chance to speak about this too. So in summation, I want to say, what could we do about it? I'm very unclear with the rules of what we can do, because I thought it was already illegal to smoke in courtyards. I don't know what we can do to enforce that. Signs, I'll leave it up to you, but just I want to bring my question into this discussion. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Kev. Rosanna.
Yes, hi. I would like to add to what Kevin just mentioned about the smoking, that I also would like to point out that smoking should be banned in the parks as well. At the South Point Park is a continuous smoking. I mean, it's a public park. There are children, there are adults, there are people who are allergic, whatever is the reason. In a public park also smoking should not be allowed. Any smoking, any type of smoking. I'm not just selective about the smoking. No smoking, period. And there is signage ever, and we should look into the regulation again for who is responsible for what signage and what law applies to South Point Park, State Park versus city parks, etc. So I think that is very important to add, and I agree with Kevin on the smoking and also the animals picking up on cigarette butts. It's horrible. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosanna. Thanks very much. Francois, please.
Yes, I would thank you, Kevin, for raising this. I've got similar issues. I've got two young kids. We spend a lot of time in the parks or the children's playground, whether it be Blackwell Park or the River Road Park, close to the 3K there, as well as the library. There's commonly smoking around all of these areas, which I believe is not legal or acceptable either.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thanks a lot. Raphael.
Yeah, just speaking up again as a parent, I too have encountered this issue. It's particularly discomforting when we are in public parks, right? Because that's supposed to be a space for our kids. And it's like, where are we supposed to go? I'm at the park with my kid so that he can enjoy it. But wait, there's actually a ton of marijuana and cigarette smoke. So let's go somewhere else. It's that people are smoking everywhere. My son has also picked up a ton of cigarette butts, which is not only hazardous, but disgusting, right? There are other people's germs on those cigarette butts. As we all know, kids are putting their hands in their mouths, and it's just really disgusting and not something that our kids or us, right, should be exposed to. These are our public spaces as well. We shouldn't be exposed to secondhand smoke or marijuana if we wouldn't like to. So just also wanted to triple underscore the points made. Thank you so much.
Nice one. Thanks, Raphael. Anna, please.
Hello, everyone. I also would like to add on the cigarette smoke. I have a small baby, and it's really uncomfortable to go outside where everybody's smoking. It's on our courtyard, on our small parks. I live by the church, and every single time we're there, it's somebody smoking. Ton of people smoking, throwing cigarette butts everywhere. Baby picks it up nonstop. It's like so stressful and so unpleasant, and it's really hazardous and poisonous for the babies to constantly be exposed to smoke. Everywhere we go, it's weed or regular cigarettes. I feel like we have to at least start somewhere. Maybe start with the signs, no smoke signs, but then it has to be enforced. The REAC police have to react to that. If we complain, or they should walk around or bike around and see if people are smoking and give them tickets. Otherwise, people are just gonna keep smoking.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing with that.
Thank you.
Kev.
No, I wanted to go after
Okay, let's
our
go to
second
Anna,
Evans.
please.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I also support all efforts to reduce rat poison and smoking on the island. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Anna. Kev, I had a thought for you, but you go first.
No, I just wanted to unmute myself to just, ask, what can we do about this? Because this really is a big issue. I think Bryant is not here at the moment, but I don't know who
Yes,
the
he is.
decision
Bryant's
makers
still
are.
here.
Oh, he's still here. So what can we do? What do you think?
So I have one suggestion, first of all. I mean, you obviously have written down what you care about for your petition, but it seems a bit broader than that now. It's not just by the chapel. If you were to write down exactly what you're talking about as a starting point, for the starting point, we could send that to Bryant, and if you can copy me as well, that'd be great. Email to him. So at least everyone's working on the same thing, and then we can come back next month again. We're not expecting Brian to give us answers to these things today, because that's unreasonable. But maybe that's a good chance for Brian to then circulate that within folks at REOC. How's that sound to you, Brian?
Yeah, put it in an email. Sorry, my connection's been fuzzy, so I've been shutting my camera off. I have the petition, but if you could put all that in writing, send it to us as well. We could take a look at it too, regarding the smoking. I just want to go back real quick. Quick point about Department of Environmental Conservation, which came to the island in response to some of the dog situations. They checked our operations, like Amy had mentioned. They didn't find anything too problematic. But what we did ask of them was, we said, do you guys do any outreach, sort of awareness about how to properly utilize these different pesticides and herbicides? And they said, yes, we do. And we said, well, it'd be nice if you could do that for the buildings on our island. If you could do a seminar with the buildings about how to properly use these products, I think it would probably go a long way towards helping us in some of our situations. They have agreed to do that. I don't have the schedule for it yet or when that's supposed to take place, but we are trying to make it so that the buildings are a little more aware of proper protocols when using any of those items.
Thank you, Bryant.
So
Kev, did you have
what's the
something you want to
email?
add? Can I drop it in the chat?
And while you're working on that, also when you can, if you can confirm, not right now, but confirm the marijuana policy, because my understanding from reading the rules is that you can't do it in cars, regardless if it's on or off. But this one was on, but the RIPD seems to think you can. So there's a big discrepancy there, because driving drunk and weed under the influence of weed is also extremely dangerous here, especially if they're high in a big car that they are. So
yeah, I'll have to check in with PSD about that. And by the way, we have another PSD community engagement meeting coming up. I believe it's Tuesday, November 19th at Good Shepherd Chapel. So just putting that on everybody's radar. Anytime you want to come and speak directly with the chief, we're available at those. Those are bi-monthly meetings that we hold.
Oh yeah. Also, I wanted to address Paul. Yes, my scope did broaden after a while, because when I brought up the specific issue about the smoking in chapel church, so many parents were saying, aim higher, let's get it done everywhere else. So that's why, and so I'm sorry for not being clear there.
Are you happy now, Kevin, that we started something?
Let's do it.
Good. Rick.
So just on the smoking and the marijuana issue in public, in the past, the Public Safety Department has said that they are not going to be enforcing, we're not going to try to crack down on these types of things because the Queens District Attorney or the Manhattan District Attorney refuses to take those types of cases. So it's just a waste of their time to do anything about outdoor marijuana smoking.
Thank you, Rick. I mean, I'd be happy if we had no smoking around the chapel and all the parks, just cigarette smoking. That's the starting point as well. So if marijuana is something that can't be thrown in as well, but at least have the cigarettes. Yeah, there are places you can have no smoking in the city. So my old building where I lived before I came here, the outdoor plaza was a public plaza, but there were no smoking signs because the building had the right to enforce that. So I guess all we're going to ask Brian to do is to find out for the public plaza space around the chapel and for the various parks, playgrounds and parks, what the rules are here, who can enforce that kind of thing. Thank you, Rick. One more person to speak. So, Herta, let's make this the last person speaking because it's very.
Thank you. Just a short question, just technical, out of curiosity, because you speak about the marijuana, which I understand and I agree. But isn't it that it is legal in New York State? And then how can you ban it?
Well, in the same way that you can ask people not to, or tell people they can't smoke in certain places, cigarettes, the same we hope would apply to smoking marijuana cigarettes. That's all. But thank you, everybody, today.
Thank you.
That's been a great meeting. I've been thrilled with everyone turning up today and sharing their views on these issues that really affect us all: tram, transportation, poison, and smoking. So thank you. Please come next month. And come next month and Bryant will come back and report on these things. I want to see it's much more iterative now that we have a body of people who are much more involved. So thanks again. See you next month and we'll chat.